Question of the Week from the Naked Scientists.
Hello and welcome to Question of the Week. I'm James Titko. This week's question comes from listener John.
We are all familiar with the 10,000 steps goal, but long-legged people take fewer steps to cover the same distance as people who have shorter strides. Heavier people need to use more energy to take a step than a lighter person. So are all steps created equal?
It seems like sound logic, John. Exercise is obviously hugely beneficial for our health, whether it be reducing our risk of heart disease or dementia to improving our mood. But it would make sense that the right amount of physical activity to reap its raft of rewards is probably going to depend on your individual circumstances. Helping us to answer this week's query is Raj Amanani, consultant in sports and exercise medicine. First of all, that 10,000 steps goal you mentioned, John, where does it come from?
There's a lot of theories as to where that number came from, but I think the one that's agreed amongst most people is that it actually, interestingly, came from a Japanese advert in the 60s. They were selling a pedometers to help people track their step count. And I think they figured 10,000 was an easy step count to remember, and most people could hit it with some effort. So I think that became legend and lore over the years. But there's been lots of research and studies since then that has said probably 10,000 isn't that magical number as we all once thought and believed. And as the question said, how we walk makes a big difference to how much energy we exert. So things like step length, body size, your weight, and how efficiently you walk really can change how much energy you're using. So as you said, two people walking 10,000 steps certainly does not mean the same level of exertion or the same level of benefit even. So we know that people who are heavier, you have to, of course, use a lot more energy to get the same amount of workload with the same amount of steps. So I think certainly it is not a perfect number for anyone to aim towards.
This begs the question, if the nature of the physical activity someone has to do to benefit their health varies from person to person, how should they be able to know they've done enough?
I think a really good place to start to answer that question is the Chief Medical Officer Guidelines on Physical Activity. So I'm sure a lot of the listeners will be familiar with this, but the UK government put this out a few years ago based on evidence about how much exercise we should be doing. And the general consensus was that we should try to be getting 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise per week or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity exercise per week. People get really worked up with health trackers and wearables around this, but I think there's a really simple way to break it down, and we call it the Sing Talk test. And essentially, it's the level of breathlessness you get to a point where if you can talk whilst you're doing an exercise, that's probably low intensity. But if you can do the exercise and not sing during it, that suggests that you're getting into more kind of the moderate, closer to vigorous intensity. So that level of shortness of breath is a really easy way to figure out how intense your exercise is. This actually links to a really nice study that was published a couple of weeks ago in the Annals of Internal Medicine, and that looked at almost 30,000 people across a couple of countries to look at actually, is it the volume of steps that we're doing or is it the intensity? And what they interestingly found that actually shorter bursts of brisk walking, so 10 to 15 minutes of higher intensity walking, does reduce our cardiovascular risk and all-cause mortality risk by quite a significant amount, even if you're not doing 10,000 steps, for example. So actually people who are doing 4,000 to 7,000 steps at a higher intensity, a shorter burst, actually may be doing better than those who are doing 10,000 steps at a really slow intensity.
So John, 10,000 daily steps, while certainly no bad thing, is probably not the most efficient way, scientifically speaking, to better your health through exercise. You're right that heavier people use more energy per step and thus need fewer to enjoy an equal health benefit, but they, like all of us, would perhaps be better off with a few short jogs or maybe some simple weight exercises to get their heart rate up. This, research suggests, would be better for their heart health. Thanks to Raj Amanani, consultant in sports and exercise medicine, for helping us with that answer. Next time on Question of the Week, we're answering this from Paris, voiced up by Will.
What determines how long a fetus gestates for in humans and other animals?
Very interesting indeed. We look forward to that one. If you have any questions of your own, why not send them in to chris@thenakedscientists.com and you could feature in a future show. And if you have any thoughts on today's or any of our other questions, why not log on to the forum at nakedscientists.com/forum to have your say. Until next time, from me, James Titko, thanks for listening and goodbye.
Question of the Week is part of the Naked Scientists podcast. Look us up online at nakedscientists.com.